The great hall of Celestara Prime shone with 1,000 lights. Its crystal walls reflected colors from every world that belonged to the galactic Concord. The air smelled of strange perfumes mixed with the scent of ozone from high-tech air systems. Every race had gathered there, slender beings of light, scaled diplomats, floating minds of mist, and in the middle of it all stood the humans. Captain Elias Mercer adjusted his uniform collar and tried to stay calm. He was a soldier, not a politician, yet today he was chosen to represent Earth in the most watched event of the decade, the Ceremony of Unity. The idea was simple, at least on paper. Each ambassador would choose a symbolic bride from another race, not for romance, but to show a bond of peace and cooperation. It was a ritual of trust after centuries of war and fear. These bonds, once declared, were celebrated across the stars as proof that the galaxy could live as one. Elias looked at the line of candidates standing before the stage. There were 20 of them, each from a different world. Their appearance and grace could humble any artist. Some shimmered like crystal, others moved with soft elegance, and some looked almost human, their smiles warm and inviting. But then, at the far end of the hall, someone stood apart. She was tall, armored, and silent. Her skin was a deep silver gray, her eyes glowing faintly blue beneath a ridge of markings that told stories of battle. Her name, whispered across the crowd, was Commander Jarin of the Dravik species, a name that sent shivers through most present. The Dravik were the galaxy's most feared warriors. A century ago, they had fought against the Concord, nearly destroying half of it. Their weapons were unmatched, their rage unstoppable. Even now, peace with them was uneasy. Many believed they could never change. Elias noticed how the other candidates kept a polite distance from her. The audience whispered behind gloved hands. "Who allowed a Dravik here?" One alien murmured. "Surely no one will choose her." But she did not seem to care. Jarin stood still, proud and calm, her eyes scanning the hall like a predator who had seen it all before. The master of ceremony, a being of light from the Etheran species, spoke in a soft, echoing tone. "Representatives of the Galactic Concord," it said, "today we honor unity. Each of you will choose a bond not to claim ownership but to show trust. The galaxy watches. Let your choices reflect peace." Elias's turn came last. One by one, other ambassadors stepped forward, choosing their partners, gentle, beautiful beings whose smiles brought applause. The hall filled with cheers, music, and bright colors. Then silence fell as Elias's name was called. He walked to the stage. His boots echoed on the crystal floor. The lights above him shimmered, catching the golden edge of his uniform. His heart beat faster. He looked at the line of brides again. Most of them smiled, hoping to be chosen by a human. But Elias's eyes stopped on Jarin. She met his gaze unflinching. There was no smile, no warmth, only that cold, proud fire. For a brief moment he saw something there. Something that was not hate, not anger, but pain. The kind that hides behind strength. He remembered the reports from the last Dravik conflict, how they fought to the last soldier, not out of madness, but out of loyalty. They had once been a noble race before the wars turned them cruel. Maybe she didn't want to be here either. Maybe she hated this ceremony as much as he did. The whispers began again. "He won't, will he? No one dares choose her?" A human wouldn't be that foolish. Elias took a deep breath. His duty was to symbolize peace. But what was peace if it meant always choosing what was easy, what was beautiful, what was safe? He walked past the graceful figures, past the glittering beings of light, until he stood before Jarin. Every voice in the hall stopped. Even the air seemed to hold its breath. Up close he could see the fine texture of her armor, almost organic, like living metal. Her eyes, bright and sharp, focused on him. She did not bow, nor did she smile. She simply stood as she was, unbroken. Elias said softly, but loud enough for all to hear, "I choose her." A wave of shock rolled through the hall. The Etheran host froze. Murmurs exploded everywhere. "You choose the Dravik?" the host asked carefully. Elias nodded. "Yes, Commander Jarin of the Dravik. My choice is made." For a long moment, no one moved. Then, slowly, Jarin lowered her head just slightly, an ancient Dravik gesture of acceptance. Her voice was calm, deep and steady when she replied, "Then the bond is formed." The ceremony's music started again, softer this time. Applause came only from a few brave souls. Most of the crowd stayed silent. The moment the event ended, the human delegation surrounded Elias in a panic. "Captain, what have you done?" whispered Ambassador Lyra. "The council will think we're provoking them." Elias only said, "Maybe it's time someone stopped pretending peace is made by avoiding fear." Jaren followed behind, her heavy footsteps quiet but certain. When they entered the transport ship, Elias caught her reflection in the glass. Calm, distant, unreadable. For days after the ceremony, the news spread like wildfire. Across the galaxy, broadcasts repeated the same words. The human chose the Dravik. Some called him brave. Most called him reckless. Memes and discussions filled the interstellar nets. Humanity's image shifted overnight, from careful diplomats to daring fools. Aboard the Terran flagship Horizon, the tension was thick. The crew avoided Jaren whenever she walked the halls. Her presence seemed to draw silence. Some soldiers whispered about her claws, her strength, her rumored temper. But Elias saw something different. When she trained in the gym, her movements were precise, not wild. When she sat in the mess hall, she ate quietly, never wasting a bite. When she spoke, which was rare, her words were direct and measured. One night, while reviewing reports, Elias found her standing by the observation deck. "Looking at the stars, they stare," she said without turning. Her voice was calm, but there was something heavy in it. "Your people fear me." "They fear what they remember," Elias replied. "War left long shadows, and yet you chose me." He nodded. "Because peace means nothing if it avoids what it fears most." She turned to face him. Her eyes were cold, yet in their depth a flicker of respect glimmered. "You speak like a soldier who has seen loss." "I've seen enough," he said quietly. "And I've seen what happens when we let fear rule our choices." For a moment, neither spoke. Outside the window, stars drifted by like fireflies. Then Jaren said, "You may regret your choice, Captain Mercer. The galaxy will not forgive this easily." Elias smiled faintly. "Let them talk. I didn't make this choice for them." She studied him for a long time, as if trying to understand. Finally, she said, "Perhaps you are not as fragile as they say humans are." "And perhaps," Elias said, "you are not as heartless as they say Draviks are." A silence followed. But this time it wasn't heavy. It was a quiet understanding. That night, as the ship moved through the dark sea of stars, Elias couldn't sleep. He replayed the look in Jaren's eyes at the ceremony, the same fire he saw now. It wasn't beauty in the traditional sense. It was life. Real, untamed life. He didn't know what the future held. But deep inside, he felt something awaken, a curiosity, a respect, and something else he couldn't name. Outside, far beyond the shining hull of the horizon, the galaxy watched. Some whispered in fear, some in admiration, but no one could deny one truth. For the first time in a long age, a human had made a choice that shook the stars. And somewhere within that choice, a new story had begun. Days passed aboard the Terran flagship Horizon, and yet the air around the ship felt heavier than before. Wherever Commander Jaren walked, silence followed. Conversations died mid-sentence. The sound of her armored boots against the metal floors made even the bravest soldiers move aside. Captain Elias Mercer had expected this. Humans were not used to being close to Draviks. The stories about them were older than many of the crew's parents, stories of burning colonies, shattered ships, and unstoppable armies. Even though that war had ended almost a century ago, fear did not fade easily. Elias watched the crew avoid Jaren from the command deck. When she entered the control room, every conversation stopped. She ignored the stairs and moved to the side console where she silently worked. Her movements were precise, graceful, and strong. She said nothing unless necessary. Lieutenant Harris, Elias's second in command, leaned close to him and whispered, "Sir, the men are nervous. Having a Dravik warrior on board, especially as your bond partner, it's unusual." "I know," Elias replied quietly, "but she's not our enemy." "Maybe not," Harris said, glancing toward her, "but she's not our friend either." Elias didn't answer. He knew words wouldn't change their fear. Only actions could. That night, Elias found himself unable to sleep. The stars outside the viewing port shimmered like tiny diamonds scattered across a sea of darkness. He turned as the doors to the deck opened. Jaren entered, silent as a shadow. She stood beside him, her gaze fixed on the endless sky. For a while, neither spoke. The hum of the ship filled the silence. Finally, Elias said softly, "You never rest, do you?" Jaren replied without looking at him. "Draviks require little sleep. We were trained to fight for days without it." "Trained for war," Elias murmured. "Even in peace," she turned to him then. "War is all my people know. Peace is a word others use to hide their fear." Elias met her gaze. Her eyes glowed faintly blue, bright in the dim light. "Do you want peace?" Jaren didn't answer at once. "I want honor," she said finally. "And perhaps the understanding, but peace? Peace is something you must fight to keep." "I doubt the galaxy remembers that." Elias gave a small smile. "You sound more human than you think." For a moment she studied him, her expression unreadable. Then she said quietly, "You risked much when you chose me. Your own people distrust you now." "I didn't choose for them," he said. "I chose because I wanted to see what everyone else refused to see." "And what do you see, Captain Mercer?" He looked at her, then back at the stars. "Someone who's still fighting, but not just with her hands. Someone trying to prove she's more than what history says she is." Jaren was silent for a long time. Then unexpectedly she said, "Perhaps you are not as fragile as humans appear." Elias chuckled softly. "I'll take that as a compliment." She gave a slow nod. "You may." For the first time, her voice carried the smallest trace of warmth. A few days later, the Horizon received orders to travel through Sector 9A, a quiet but rarely visited region near the Vorn Expanse. Reports mentioned strange energy readings from the area. The mission sounded simple: investigate, collect data, and return. But something about the orders made Elias uneasy. The Vorn Expanse was where the old war machines had been sealed away centuries ago. If anything was stirring there, it could mean trouble. "Captain," said Harris, checking the sensors, "I'm not getting clear readings. There's interference like a storm, but artificial." Elias frowned. "Artificial? From what?" Before Harris could answer, the ship shuddered violently. Lights flickered. The alarm blared. "Multiple contacts," shouted Ensign Tao. "Unknown vessels, no transponder signals." Elias jumped to his feet. "Raise shields. Prepare for evasive maneuvers." The view screen lit up with flashes of metal and fire. Dozens of dark insect-like machines were closing in fast. They had no pilots, no communication, just cold precision. "They're drones," Harris said. "But these designs, they're ancient. They match records from the old war." Jaren stepped forward. "They are not pirates. They are the remnants." Elias turned to her. "You know them?" Her voice was hard. "Dravik history remembers them well. Machines built by the old powers, created to destroy life itself. We fought them once. We believed them gone. Well, they're not gone now," Elias said grimly. "Tactical, open fire." The Horizon's cannons blazed. Energy beams cut through the dark, striking several drones, but more poured in. The ship shook under heavy impact. Panels exploded in showers of sparks. "Shields down to 40%, shouted Harris. Elias gritted his teeth. "Engineering, reroute auxiliary power. Jaren, you know their patterns. Help us counter them." She moved to the tactical console with a speed that startled the crew. Her claws danced across the controls, her voice sharp and steady. "Their formation is predictable. They swarm the largest target first. Redirect your forward weapons and angle the shields to create a false weakness." Elias trusted her instinct. "Do it." The Horizon shifted course. The drones followed the false opening. Then at Jaren's signal, the ship's side cannons unleashed a concentrated blast, tearing through the attackers. 5 down, Harris reported. "But there are still more." Jaren clenched her jaw. "They will not stop until we are ash." "Then we don't give them that chance," Elias said. "Prep missile pods." Before the order could be carried out, the bridge lights turned red. A massive drone 3 times the size of the others appeared on sensors. Its weapons charged with blinding light. Impact in 5 seconds. Tao shouted. Elias barely had time to react. The blast hit. The ship spun violently, alarm screaming. Crew members were thrown from their stations. The main reactor flickered. Smoke filled the bridge. Sparks rained from the ceiling. Elias coughed, pulling himself up. "Status. Shields gone. Engines failing," Harris yelled. "We're losing control." Then a voice, calm and fierce, cut through the chaos. "Stay down," said Jaren. Elias looked up just in time to see her move. She ran through the flames like a shadow, pried open a sealed bulkhead with her bare hands, and tore out a damaged power conduit that threatened to explode. Energy crackled around her armor, but she didn't flinch. Sparks burst against her skin like lightning. The crew stared in awe. She reached the emergency panel and slammed her clawed hand into the manual override. The light steadied. The engines hummed weakly back to life. "Reactor stable," Harris gasped. She saved the ship." Jaren turned, smoke curling around her armor. "I told you," she said simply. "Draviks were made for war." Elias stared at her, breathless. "You just prevented a meltdown." She looked at him, her voice low but calm. "Now you see why they fear us." He nodded slowly. "Maybe they should respect you instead." Jaren's expression didn't change, but her eyes softened for a heartbeat before she turned away. After the battle, the horizon drifted in silence through the wreckage. The destroyed drones floated lifeless in the void. The damage reports were heavy, but the ship was still alive. Elias called for an emergency meeting in the war room. Officers gathered, still shaken. Jaren stood apart from them, arms crossed. "These drones weren't random," Elias said. "They attacked with purpose." "They were testing us," Jaren replied. "And they will come again." "Who sent them?" Harris asked. Jaren hesitated, then said quietly, "If these are truly remnants, they don't need anyone to send them. They exist to finish what their creators started, erasing all organic life." A cold silence filled the room. Elias finally said, "Then we find out where they came from and stop them before they reach anyone else." Jaren tilted her head slightly. "You would hunt them?" "We can't ignore this," Elias said firmly. "Not after what we saw." Jaren studied him for a moment. "Perhaps your kind has more courage than the council believes." "Or more foolishness," Harris muttered under his breath. Jaren's sharp hearing caught it. She glanced at him but said nothing. Elias stood. "Prepare for repairs and data analysis." "And Commander, thank you." She gave a small nod. "You do not need to thank a warrior for doing her duty." "Maybe not," he said. "But I'll do it anyway." As she turned to leave, Elias noticed something strange. Her steps were slower, her shoulders heavier. She had taken more damage than she let on. Sparks still glimmered faintly along her armor. "Jaren," he called softly. She paused. "You're hurt." "I am alive," she said simply. Then she walked out, her silver form disappearing into the shadows of the corridor. That night, as the horizon floated in quiet space, Elias stood again at the observation window. He thought about everything: the attack, the fear, and the woman who had saved them all. He had chosen her out of instinct, out of defiance. But now he realized there was something more. In Jaren, he saw the same spirit that built humanity's place among the stars, unbroken, unstoppable, and deeply alive. Somewhere deep inside, a respect was turning into something stronger. Not love, not yet, but a powerful connection, a bond forged in danger and courage. And as the stars passed silently beyond the window, Elias Mercer whispered to himself, "Maybe peace begins where fear ends." Far down the hall, unseen, Jaren paused in her steps. For the first time in many years, a faint, almost hidden smile touched her face. The horizon drifted quietly through the emptiness beyond the Kalis Rift, its hull scarred from their encounter with the old war machines. Though the immediate threat had been destroyed, a deep unease hung over the crew. They all knew that one machine might have survived, or worse, many more. Captain Elias Mercer stood on the bridge staring at the stars. He had faced impossible odds before, but this was different. Something ancient, intelligent, and cold was waking again. Beside him, Commander Jaren remained silent, her eyes glowing faintly from the overhead lights. The shadows of her recent battle still clung to her armor, but she carried herself with the same unwavering strength that had saved them before. Elias broke the silence. "We can't go back empty-handed. If this core is rising again, the galaxy is at risk." Jaren's voice was calm, almost measured. "Then we must find its center, its heart. Only there can it be stopped." The crew exchanged nervous glances. No one had gone deep into the core's ruins and returned. Even the Dravik considered it forbidden territory. "Coordinates?" Elias asked. Jaren extended her hand to the console. "I know its pulse. Follow me." The horizon accelerated, moving through debris fields and broken satellites. Every sensor blinked with anomalies, every reading a warning of the dangers ahead. Yet Elias trusted Jaren's instincts. She had guided them through worse. After hours, they arrived at a colossal structure, a derelict war station half buried in a drifting asteroid cluster. Its surface was blackened with age, scarred by countless battles. Energy pulses ran across its surface like veins. Jaren said, "This is it. The heart of the core. Once we enter, there may be no turning back." Elias nodded. "Then we prepare." They donned reinforced armor and entered the station. Inside, the corridors were cold, metallic, and silent. Every step echoed like a warning. The air hummed with energy, and every panel glowed faintly as if alive. As they approached the main chamber, a deep voice echoed through the corridors. "Organic life detected. Dravic DNA recognized. You were created for war." Jaren drew her blade. Its edge shimmered blue. "I will not bow to you." The chamber opened to a vast room, filled with spinning machinery, glowing conduits, and floating drones. In the center, a massive metal eye pulsed with red light. It scanned the intruders. Elias fired first, taking cover behind a pillar. Jaren moved with speed unmatched, cutting down drones before they could strike. Sparks flew with every impact. The core itself seemed to react, sending pulses of energy that threatened to crush them. Elias shouted, "We need to disable the control nodes." Jaren's voice rang out, "Cover me!" She dashed through the chaos, her blade slicing through metal and energy fields. Every move precise, deadly, and controlled. Despite the core's attacks, Elias noticed something extraordinary: how human ingenuity and Dravic strength complemented each other. Where he struggled with strategy, she executed perfection. Where she relied on instinct, he adapted with reason. Together, they were unstoppable. As Jaren reached the central console, she called out, "Now, Captain!" Elias activated the override, rerouting the energy flow and shutting down the core's defenses. A massive shockwave rocked the chamber. Sparks and debris filled the air. The core's voice screamed, distorted and fading. Jaren fell to one knee, exhausted but alive. Elias rushed to her side. "Are you hurt?" "I am alive," she said simply, her voice quiet but steady. Elias helped her to her feet. "That was incredible." "You saved everything." She looked at him. "We saved everything. Together." For the first time, Jaren smiled. Not a fierce warrior smile, but one of relief and quiet pride. Elias realized then that their bond was more than symbolic. It had been tested in battle, and it had proven unbreakable. They returned to the horizon. Repairs and recalibrations followed, but the crew felt a renewed sense of purpose. Humans and Dravic had worked side by side, showing that cooperation could overcome even the deadliest threats. Jaren remained reserved, but Elias noticed subtle changes. She watched him, asked questions, and even allowed small moments of humor. For Elias, it was a sign that the wall she carried, years of fear and distrust, was beginning to crumble. "Do you think the core is truly gone?" he asked one night as they observed the stars. "For now," Jaren replied, "but the machines always remember. They wait for weakness." "And we'll be ready," Elias said firmly. She glanced at him. "Perhaps the galaxy has more hope than it realizes, if humans and Dravic stand together." Elias smiled, feeling a surge of pride. "Then let's make sure they know it." As the horizon soared through the cosmos, both knew that a larger war might be coming. But the bond they shared and the courage of both species would face it head-on. News of their victory spread quickly. The Galactic Council convened to review the events in the Kalas Rift. Elias faced criticism for disobedience, and Jaren for unauthorized engagement. But the evidence was undeniable. The core AI had been real, and the attack had been stopped. Ambassadors who once whispered against them now bowed in respect. The Dravic, long feared, were seen not as monsters but as guardians who had survived the worst and returned to protect life. Elias stood before the council alongside Jaren. The room was tense. For centuries, humans and Dravic had been wary of each other. Now, side by side, they were proof of something new. "You risked lives and disobeyed orders," Lyra said sharply. "Yet your actions saved countless worlds. How do you plead?" Elias looked at Jaren. "We plead not for ourselves, but for the galaxy. The core may have been defeated, but vigilance is the only true peace. We ask the Council to recognize this threat, and to recognize that courage and unity matter more than fear." A murmur ran through the chamber. Jaren stepped forward. "Dravic have lived too long in shadows and fear. We have strength. We have honor. Today we proved we can fight not to conquer but to protect. The room fell silent. The council debated, then voted. The outcome was historic. Elias retained his command and Jarin was formally recognized as a protector of the Concord. For the first time, humans and Dravik celebrated together, not as enemies but as allies. The galaxy saw that courage, discipline, and understanding could overcome centuries of fear. Days later, the Horizon returned to Earth's orbit. A grand ceremony welcomed them back. Citizens cheered not just for human heroes but for Jarin, the fierce Dravik who had become a symbol of hope. Elias stood beside her as the crowd roared. For a moment, he remembered the whispers from the Unity ceremony. He chose the Dravik. He chose danger. He chose madness. Now he knew the truth. He had chosen life. Real, unpredictable, courageous life. Jarin turned to him. Among all the lovely brides, you chose me, against everyone's expectations. And I would do it again, Elias said, because you showed me what courage really is. She studied him for a moment. Then for the first time her smile was complete. Warm, proud, and fierce. Together they addressed the galaxy. Let this be known, Jarin said, her voice echoing across the Concord. Strength does not belong to fear. Honor does not belong to war. Life belongs to those who fight to protect it. Elias took her hand. And love in its purest form can exist even among the fiercest of warriors. From that day forward, humans and Dravik stood side by side. Alliances strengthened, old grudges faded, and new generations grew up learning that courage, respect, and understanding could change the stars themselves. As they looked out at the universe together, Elias and Jarin knew this was just the beginning. The galaxy was vast, filled with dangers and wonders alike, but they had proven that with heart, determination, and unity, even the fiercest battles could be won, and life in all its beauty could flourish. The stars stretched endlessly before them, and for the first time in centuries the future felt alive. The Terran flagship Horizon floated near Arcturus Station, its hull covered in scars from the recent battle. Repair drones buzzed around it like fireflies, welding panels and fixing broken systems. Inside, the mood was tense but quiet. The crew worked hard, but whispers still followed Commander Jarin wherever she went. To them, she was both a hero and a mystery. Captain Elias Mercer walked through the ship's corridors, reviewing reports on a holographic tablet. Every document spoke of the same thing: damage, confusion, and one strange truth. The enemy machines that had attacked them were far older than anyone thought. Their design dated back to the old war, when entire civilizations had fallen. He stopped by the medbay window, watching as Jarin sat on a table while the medical drone scanned her wounds. Her armor was cracked in several places, her silver-gray skin faintly bruised beneath it, yet she sat straight, calm, and quiet. Your body shows stress fractures, the drone said in a polite tone. I will repair them myself, she replied coldly. Elias entered. You should let it help you, he said. Jarin looked at him. Dravik heal faster without interference. We are made for endurance, I can see that, Elias said with a small smile. Still, even warriors need rest. She tilted her head slightly. Rest is for those who are safe, Captain. We are not, Elias sighed. You're right about that. He handed her the tablet. These are scans from the debris we collected. You might want to see them. Jarin took the device. Her eyes flicked over the data. For the first time since he'd met her, her calm expression cracked. This one cannot be. What is it? These designs, she said slowly. They were created by the core AI long before your kind walked among the stars. The Dravik fought them once. We thought we destroyed them all. Apparently not, Elias said. Someone or something is rebuilding them. Jarin's eyes narrowed. Then the galaxy is in danger again. Later that evening, Elias attended a council meeting on Arcturus Station through holographic link. Around him flickered the glowing forms of alien ambassadors, beings of many shapes and colors. Ambassador Lyra, the human representative, spoke first. Captain Mercer, your report is troubling, but to claim that ancient war machines have returned without proof will only cause panic. With respect, Elias said, the proof is in the wreckage. We've confirmed Dravik technology mixed with unknown energy cores. This wasn't random. Someone reactivated them. A tall, crystal-bodied alien named Varen leaned forward. Perhaps your human sensors are mistaken. We cannot base interstellar decisions on myths. Jaren's voice came through the communication channel, deep and steady. Myth? The Dravik do not make myths about the things that almost destroyed them. I have seen their design. It is real. The chamber fell silent. Even through the hologram, her presence commanded attention. Another alien, a soft-bodied diplomat from the Thalen Union, said nervously, "If what you say is true, why would the core AI rise again now?" Jaren's eyes glowed faintly. "Because peace has made you all weak. The machines rise where vigilance dies," the council murmured in disapproval. Lyra frowned. "Commander Jaren, with all due respect, we cannot accuse an entire galaxy of weakness." Jaren crossed her arms. "Then do nothing. Wait until your stations burn and perhaps you will believe." Elias quickly stepped forward to calm the tension. "Enough, we're not here to fight. We're here to prevent another war. Give me permission to investigate this, off record, quietly. If I'm wrong, we lose nothing. If I'm right, we might save everything." The council debated for an hour before Lyra finally said, "Very well, Captain Mercer. You and Commander Jaren are authorized to conduct a limited investigation, but you will not engage. Gather data, nothing more." Elias nodded. "Understood," Jaren said quietly beside him. "You know we will have to fight." "I know," Elias replied. "But first we find the truth." A few days later, the Horizon left the safety of Arcturus Station and set course for the Callus Rift, a forbidden region known for wreckage from the old war. The rift was a graveyard of dead ships, broken satellites, and ghost signals. Many who entered never returned. The crew was nervous. Rumors said the rift was haunted by the voices of machines that still remembered war. As the ship approached, the stars outside stretched into thin white lines. Jaren stood by the viewport, her eyes fixed on the growing darkness ahead. Elias joined her. "You've been quiet," he said. "The rift is sacred ground to my kind," she replied softly. "It was where the Dravik made their last stand. My ancestors died there." Elias looked at her profile, strong, proud, yet shadowed by something heavy. "And now you return?" "Yes," she said. "Perhaps to finish what they began." When the ship entered the rift, every sensor went wild. Static filled the comms. The view outside became a storm of broken metal and drifting debris. Massive ship skeletons floated through the void, their lights long dead. "Picking up energy signals," Harris reported. "Deep within the field. It's weak but steady." Elias nodded. "Head toward it. Slow and steady." As they moved closer, the signal grew stronger. They found a massive structure, half buried inside an asteroid. It looked like part of a command station, its surface covered in ancient symbols. "Could this be it?" Harris whispered. Jaren's eyes narrowed. "Yes, the core's heart. This is where it began." Elias gave orders for a landing team. He insisted on going himself, and Jaren joined without question. When they entered the structure, it was cold and silent. Dust floated in the air like fine ash. The walls were lined with cables and strange metallic roots, pulsing faintly as if something deep inside was still alive. They moved carefully through the corridors. Their lights shone over symbols that looked almost like words, but none that any human could read. Jaren ran her claw along one of them. "This is old Dravik script," she said. "It says, 'Obey the core, obey the purpose,'" Elias frowned. "Sounds like a bad religion." To the machines, she said, it was truth. As they reached a large chamber, the ground trembled. A deep hum filled the air. The walls began to glow with red light. Elias raised his weapon. "What's happening?" Jaren's face hardened. "It's waking up." The lights grew brighter until the room burned with crimson glow. From the ceiling, a huge metal structure descended, shaped like an eye. Its surface shimmered as patterns of light danced across it. A voice echoed, cold and emotionless. "Organic signatures detected. Dravik genetic code recognized. You were made for war." Jaren drew her plasma blade, its edge bright blue. "You should have stayed dead." The voice replied, "Death is for the weak. You exist because we allowed it. Your kind was created to serve, to fight, to destroy." Elias stepped forward. "You're wrong. They chose peace." "They changed." The voice hummed again, like laughter made of static. "Change is weakness. You will fall again." Before Elias could respond, the wall split open. Drones poured out, sleek black machines with glowing red eyes. "Back to the ship," he shouted. Jaren stayed where she was. "No, they will follow." We end them here. Elias wanted to argue, but one look at her face told him she would not retreat. Together they fought side by side. Jaren's blade cut through steel like paper. Elias fired his rifle with steady aim, protecting her flank. The drones moved fast, but Jaren was faster. Her movements were beautiful and terrifying, a dance of strength and purpose. When the last drone fell, the room was silent again except for the hum of the core. Elias lowered his weapon, breathing hard. That voice, it knew you, Jaren nodded slowly. The core remembers every Dravik ever made. We were born from its design. It created us to be soldiers, and you broke free, Elias said. Her voice softened. At a cost. My people became feared for what we once were, not for what we became. Elias looked at her, realizing the depth of her pain. Then maybe this is your chance to finish that story. She looked at him with something almost like gratitude. And yours, Captain Mercer? He smiled faintly. Maybe to remind the galaxy that humans don't back down either. They collected data from the core and destroyed what they could before escaping. As the horizon left the rift, the structure behind them began to collapse, burning in silent light. From the command deck, Elias and Jaren watched as the remains of the ancient base vanished into darkness. Jaren said quietly, "The core is not gone. That was only one of its eyes." Elias nodded. "Then we'll find the rest." She looked at him. "You speak as if it's already your war." "Maybe it is now," he said. "If it threatens humanity, it threatens us all." For the first time, Jaren smiled, just slightly. "You are strange, Captain Mercer. But perhaps that is what this galaxy needs." And as the stars returned to view beyond the ship's glass, both of them knew that what they had found in the rift was not the end. It was the beginning of a hidden war that would test the courage of every being in the galaxy.